for scrutiny, joint scrutiny tonight. This meeting will be live streamed and the recording made available to view via the council's website, except for discussions involving confidential or exempt items. Therefore, the images, audio of those individuals speaking will be publicly available to all via the recording on the council's website. Okay, agenda item 1, to receive apologies for absence and then take a roll call.
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillors Gordon, Councillor Priest, Councillor Reid, Councillor Roberts and Councillor Whitcomb. I'll do a roll call now.
Okay, Councillor Jeremiah will be running a bit late. I'm straight from work over, so.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Is there any other apologies people know of? No, okay.
So I'll do a roll call. Councillor Adams.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Aldworth.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Angel.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Bishop. Councillor Broughton Pettit.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Chacon Dawson.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Chapman. Councillor Cook. Pat Cook. Councillor Pat Cook. Councillor Cushing.
I'm Chair.
Councillor Cuss.
Present.
Councillor Elizabeth Davis. Councillor Tudor Davis. Councillor Dix. Councillor Eade.
I'm a Chair.
Councillor Ellsbury.
Present.
Councillor Enright.
Present.
Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Evans.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Farina Childs.
Present.
Councillor Christine Forehead.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Fussell. Councillor Gare.
Present.
Councillor Haas. Councillor Heron.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Hussey.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Ingram Jones.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present, Chair.
I think Councillor Jeremiah will be attending late, Chair. You said he's running a bit late. Councillor Johnson.
Present.
Councillor Jones. Jan Jones.
Present.
Councillor Kent.
I'm here.
Councillor Ariana Leonard.
Present.
Councillor Colin Mann.
I'm a
Councillor McConnell.
Present.
Councillor Miles.
Present.
Councillor Owen.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Parry.
Emma.
Councillor Phipps.
Present.
Councillor Powell.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Price. Councillor Hayden Pritchard.
Emma.
Councillor Judith Pritchard.
Emma.
Councillor Rayo.
Present.
Councillor Sorales.
Present.
Councillor Scriven. Councillor Simmons.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Skivens.
Bureau of the Local Authority. I went to a meeting on the 19th of October 2023. 3 years after your decision, where 2 representatives from Persimmons will now state asking for the development of a new sun.
Hello, who's that?
Councillor Taylor. Councillor Thomas.
Present.
Councillor Whittle. Councillor Shane Williams.
Present.
Councillor Walter Williams.
Present.
Councillor Winslade.
Present.
Councillor Woodland.
Present.
Councillor Wright.
Present.
Just quickly go through the co-opted members. Martin Weston. Tracy Millington. Gerwyn James. Pam Ireland. Delwyn Davis. Kimberly Cole. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, can I ask that if you're not speaking, put yourself on mute? You seem to be having conversations or watching something in the background. Okay,
Have you
So-
done? Are you in the meeting?
sorry, who was that? Who spoke there now? Okay. Item 2, declarations of interest. Councillors and officers are reminded their personal responsibility to declare any personal or prejudicial interest in respect to any of the items of business on this agenda, in accordance with the Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and Code of Conduct for both officers and councillors. Are there any declarations, members?
No hands raised, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Agenda item 3, updates on reserves. Councillor Leonard Stannard, please.
Thank you, Chair. The report provides details of the usable reserves held by the authority. Details are provided of balances held at the 31st of March 2023, along with updates to reflect in-year movements and recommended movements on reserves. Recommendations are shown at 3.1 and members are asked to note the content of the report and endorse the recommendations to Cabinet as laid out at 3.1. Officers are in attendance this evening to assist members with any queries they may have. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, members, it's open for debate. So I've got Councillor Gary Enright first, please.
Very quick one for me, Chair, if I may. Totally take on board what was in reserves March of last year, but there's not many organisations who would make a financial decision based on 10 months old data. I get the spreadsheet, so a very quick question for me. What's in our usable reserves as of now, please?
Okay, Mr. Harris, are you able to answer that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. In the report, we have endeavoured to show movements on reserves. There are tables which show the balances for the different categories of reserve. However, to answer Councillor Enright's question, as at the 31st of March 2024, we currently forecast that the balance on reserves will be 183 million. However, if we move that further forward, by the end of the 25-26 financial year, we currently anticipate that reserves will be down to 86 million. I think that demonstrates that we're on a downward trajectory and we will not be able to rely on reserves in the medium to longer term to continue to balance the budget. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay with that, Gary?
Yeah, all good. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, next up, Councillor Lead, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions. I just want to start by saying it is
Two
gratifying to.
questions.
Yeah, is that allowed? Is that okay, Chair? They're quite
Yeah,
short
two.
ones.
Yeah.
Okay. So it is gratifying to see that the council are releasing some of their reserves, albeit only 11.39 of the uncommitted reserves to support the 23-24 budget. So I don't think it goes far enough. For example, if you look at 5.11.1 in the paper, you have identified 5.32 million of unallocated capital reserves that are actually originally revenue reserves. Now you propose to only allocate 1.419 of that, less than a quarter. So my first question is, why can't you allocate more of those unallocated reserves? And then the second question is, table on the same page, 5.11.2, the Environment and Education Director has actually seen an increase in their capital reserves of 6.9 million and 9.8 million respectively. So my question on that is, what are those substantial amounts of money for? Are there particular projects that they've been allocated for? Thanks very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You're right, we do have 5.2 million unallocated capital reserves at the moment. We are recommending around 1.4 million will be released. By the time we get to February, depending on what our month 9 projections are telling us in the budget report, we may well need to call more against those unallocated reserves. And if we don't, they will, of course, be used to support the wider capital programme. Obviously, we've got a major investment programme, the place shaping programme that's being developed currently. Members will receive a report with proposals related to that place shaping programme in due course, and that will, of course, look to allocate any unallocated capital reserves at that point in time. In terms of the specific movements on the reserves that Councillor Reid has mentioned, I don't have the detail to give you a complete breakdown, but they will, of course, all be subject to agreement through either Cabinet or delegated officer powers, and they will be earmarked for specific purposes. So I will send Councillor Reid a more detailed response outside the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
Yeah, thanks, Steve.
thank you very much. Councillor Etheridge, next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just 2 points really. The first point, I'm quite concerned that the increase in regard, if the budget goes ahead, on the pitch fees for football and rugby, etc.
This is not. This is reserves, Kevin.
Oh, we're just talking about
Yes.
reserves, are we?
Yeah,
Sorry,
reserves, and then we go to item 4
okay,
for the
sorry,
budget.
sorry, Gary. I just logged in and I had enormous problems, so I'll hold my questions. Thank you.
That's okay, no problem. Okay, Councillor Mann, then, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was wondering if Mr. Harris could give some more detail behind the forecast for a couple of years' time. I think he said 25, 26, down to 86 million. That seems to be quite a large. It is a large drop, but I wondered what the detail was behind it, please.
Yep. Okay, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm more than happy to circulate a summary to members outside the meeting, which shows the anticipated balance. But for example, we'll be maintaining the general fund at 3% of the net revenue budget, which is what I recommend as Section 151 officer and is in line with good practice. The housing revenue account, we expect that to reduce from 28 million to 2.4 million over the 3-year period. Schools earmarked reserves, we expect that to go from 11.3 million to potentially a deficit position. But of course, we will work closely with schools to try and avoid that moving forward. Our capital earmarked reserves, we expect to reduce from 48 million to 22. And even though we still have 22 available in 3 years' time, that's purely a timing issue, because some of the major projects, particularly in relation to schools, obviously won't be implemented until beyond that 3-year horizon. In terms of other earmarked reserves, we're expecting those to reduce from 58 to 32. So I think just with those headlines, you can see there will be significant reductions, but I'm more than happy to circulate that table to members outside the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Okay there, Colin. You get that?
Yeah, happy to receive that, Chair. Del,
Yeah.
Steve.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Judith Pritchard, please.
Yes, does this actually mean, because we do have high reserves compared with other authorities, does it mean that we've been rather slow in spending our money? And do we expect that to pick up in the next 3 years so that we'll be rather quicker in spending the money?
Well, the problem is you can only spend it once. That's the problem with reserves. If you spend it, then there's nothing left. Steve, do you want to answer out there, please?
Yeah, I mean, what we're demonstrating here is that these reserves in the main have been set aside for specific purposes. And we're now at a point where we will see that money being used for the purposes they were set aside. And that's why we will witness a fairly significant reduction in the reserves over the 3-year period. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, can I come back on that? Yes,
Yeah, go on
exactly.
then.
That's what I meant. That's what I meant. But is there any particular reason why we have been rather slow and we've accumulated the reserves? And I appreciate their earmark capital reserves. Why we've been so slow in the past?
Again, I come back to what I said. It's a timing issue. Reserves are established for specific purposes. A reserve that may have been set aside a number of years ago, it's only now that we're calling on it, particularly in relation to the capital programme, because obviously we don't call on the reserves until we actually incur the spend. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Right, members, I see no other hands. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move that, Chair.
I second that, Chair.
Okay, there's Councillor Williams and Councillor Rowe. Okay, members, we'll go to the vote then, please. No, we're voting.
Shall I read that?
No, I'll do it now. Yeah. So the recommendations are on page 1 of your packs. Members of the Joint Scrutiny Committee are asked to note the content of the report and endorse recommendations to Cabinet. 2. 1. Release the following uncommitted reserves to the General Fund to support the 24-25 budget. A 1.419 million from capital earmarked reserves. B. 3.769 million from other earmarked reserves, service reserves. C. 0.01 million from other over/under reserves, and D. 2 million from the insurance reserve. 2. Transfer 100% of the net 23-24 underspend position forecast at 3.656 million as at the October 23 to the General Fund to support the 24-25 revenue budget. Number 3, allocate 0.791 million from the education over underspend reserve to a specific earmark reserved for the 23-24 schools additional teachers pay award. 4, repurpose 0.108 million from private sector housing staff capability reserve to empty homes teams reserve to increase funding so that the team can be extended for 2 years. Can I have a mover and a seconder on that, please? Mr. Williams again, and Councillor Rowe.
Yes, Chair.
Okay, folks on the screen. Is there anyone can't vote? Councillor Aaron?
I couldn't vote, Chair, but I voted earlier, but then you give all the A, B and C, and then there's nothing coming up on my computer.
Okay.
There's
Well,
nothing
I'm
coming up on mine either. So
I haven't got anything on mine. Wait, whoa.
Sorry.
One at a time, please. So, Councillor Harse, can you say how you're voting?
4.
Right. Who was next then?
Teresa Parry.
Okay, Teresa, how are you voting?
I'll vote for.
Okay, anyone? Who else is next?
Dan Jones.
Okay,
Oh.
how are you voting? 4. Okay. Okay. Anyone else online?
Yeah.
Okay, Christine Forehead.
I'm voting for.
Okay, was that Councillor Chasten Dawson?
Yeah. 4.
4. Okay,
And me,
anyone else
Chair.
online?
Carl.
Jill Winslade.
Right, how are you voting?
4.
Okay, who was the other one?
Carl Kess,
Councillor Chair.
I'll be voting for.
Okay, anyone else still online?
Councillor Etheridge voting for.
Okay, anyone else?
Councillor
Councillor
Chair,
Adams,
4.
I think I jumped in too quick first time, Chair, and perhaps that so
Right.
many others of us did
Right,
the
Councillor
same,
Adams,
so it hasn't come up
for
a
or
second
against?
time. It will be 4. It's already
Okay,
4.
thank you, Mike. Okay, there was another voice there.
Councillor Gare, 4.
Councillor Gare, 4. Okay. And here,
4, please.
4. Councillor Sorales, Elizabeth, 4. Okay. We got there, did we? In the end, the numbers tally up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So with 11 verbal votes, we have that's been moved. So that's 44 votes for, 1 vote against, and we have 8 abstentions. So that's passed, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We finally got there. Thank you, everyone. I'll hold my hand up there, my fault. No problem. Okay, so item 4, the draft budget proposals. Remember, there's no vote on this. This is for comments that will go together with the consultation that's gone out, and will go to Cabinet for their consideration. Okay, so Councillor Leonard Stannard.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides details of the draft budget proposals for the 24-25 year, and Scrutiny are asked to comment on the report. Details of the 24-25 provisional local government financial settlement were released on the 20th of December 23 and showed an overall increase of 3.1% in core funding for local government on an all Wales basis. The level of increase for individual local authorities is determined by changes in data sets that drive the funding formula, and for Caerphilly County Borough Council, there is a cash uplift of 2.3%, which equates to just over £7.5 million. The increase in the settlement is of course welcome, but it is well below the level of funding required, with the council facing cost pressures totalling over £46 million for 24-25 alone. Whilst the draft budget proposals presents a balanced financial position for 24-25, a significant element of this is being achieved through one-off temporary saving measures consisting of over £11 million of temporary savings and a further call on reserves of over £11 million. These temporary one-off measures totaling over £22 million will only support the budget for the 24 financial year, and they effectively allow a transitional budget to be presented that provides the time needed to deliver emerging projects under the Mobilising Team Caerphilly Transformation Programme. The draft budget proposals also includes the proposed increase of 6.9% in council tax for the 24-25 financial year. This will increase the Caerphilly County Borough Council's Band D precept from £1,353.01 to £1,446.37. That is an annual increase of £93.36, or a weekly increase of £1.80 on a Band D property. However, it is important to stress that even with a 6.9% council tax increase, Caerphilly County Borough Council is still likely to have the lowest level of council tax in the whole of Wales. The situation moving forward remains extremely bleak, with our updated medium-term financial plan indicating a further savings requirement of over £46 million for the 2-year period 25-26 to 26-27. The Council's emerging Mobilising Team Caerphilly Transformation Programme will be a key element in driving forward the significant changes required to ensure that we are able to address the unprecedented financial challenges that we face. However, the scale of the financial gap will inevitably mean that some very difficult decisions will need to be made. But I'm afraid that this is unavoidable in the current financial environment for local authorities. We will need to strike the right balance between needs and wants, and a holistic whole authority approach will be required, with all services contributing to the savings requirement. We will also need to consider alternative service delivery models and explore opportunities to work collaboratively with our partners. It is inevitable that the authority will be smaller moving forward, and service levels in many areas will need to be reduced or even removed. It is important that local people have their say on our budget proposals, so a public consultation was launched on the 22nd of January, and I would encourage as many people as possible to have their say. The consultation programme will include extensive face-to-face engagement, a survey, a high-profile present on the Council's digital engagement platform, and targeted stakeholder activity. Key findings and responses will help shape the final budget report for members' consideration on the 27th of February 2024. Officers are in attendance this evening, again, to assist members with any queries they may have. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, members, quite a few hands going up. We will stick to the 2-question limit, but if you want to come back in with more later on, then when everyone has had the first say, I will offer you more questions. I'm going to start off with Councillor Enright. Your hand's going up and down all the time, mate, so I'd imagine you're having problems. So I'm going to let you go first. Don't mind, because your hand was up first.
I've only just put my hand up, Chair, so I don't know what's going on. My camera's going off left, right, and centre, so...
No, sorry, Gary. Councillor it's Councillor Etheridge. My fault. His hand is going up and down.
I can go first if you want. I can set
I'll
the
let
scene.
You I'll let
no, you sure?
I'm positive.
Thank you, Gary. I'm having some problems with the connection, and sorry about that. Just a couple of points, really. I do find it sad and disappointing that there was only a 2.3% rise from the Senate, but there we are, and I'm sure everyone is trying to do their best. The first point is really a statement. Last year, I believe out of 180,000 people, we had 271 responses. That's all we had, and 35% did not support an increase in council tax, while 39% supported a lower increase. And it does concern me about the consultation. I was hoping that we would have a stand in like Morrison's and Asda, because we do really need people to make their views known. And the second point is concern you, and I'd appreciate if the cabinet could look at this. 12% last year, and now up to a 20% increase on like the football fields and the cricket pitches. That does seem rather excessive when we are looking at like health and well-being. 20% increase. Could the cabinet please look at that and please consider reducing that? Thank you, Gary, and thank you, everyone.
I think who's any takers? Mr. Harris, then?
I'll start and hand over. Yeah, it is disappointing, the 2.3% increase, but as it explains in the report, it's a 3.1% average increase across Wales. The reason it's lower for us is because of the way the formula works, and we've been impacted particularly by changes in population, etc. In terms of the consultation, I believe we've got Hayley Lancaster on the line, and maybe she can explain a little bit more about the process that we'll be working through. And I'm assuming, Mark, you'll want to pick up the sports fees. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Hayley, are you there?
Sorry, Chair. Yes, I am here. Good evening, members. Yes, thank you, Councillor Etheridge, for your comments. It is also always something that we strive to improve on year. We've got a number of ways that residents can have their say this year. An online survey, a survey in hard copy available at various locations across the borough, various different drop-in sessions that people are very welcome to come and chat to us through. Any specific proposals that they have, some online drop-in sessions as well, at a variety of different times to try and suit as many people as possible, but certainly always looking to build on it. And if the members would like us to consider how our very limited resource would stretch even further, then we would certainly more than happy to look at that.
Thank you, Hayley. Mark?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if I could just perhaps dispel some myths about the costs relating to sports pitches and matches. So typically, members may have seen an article in the media today which quotes £54 an hour. That is actually incorrect. It's £54 per match, and a match takes a pavilion and pitch out of action for 2 hours. Okay. In order to prepare for that match, typically pitch prep and marking would be of the order of £100. Cost the pavilion attendant in terms of opening up, putting the boiler on, etc., cleaning after the match is about £48. So that's £148 for a match, and we charge £54.06 for a senior match. So those costs don't even include energy. And last year there was an additional 200,000 put into our outdoor sports budget to cover energy increases. So the net budget, so that's after taking account of costs versus income, is this year £450,000 for provision of sports pitches, and our charges are significantly lower than many local authorities in and around Caerphilly. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Whittle, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In May 1999, I had the privilege of being elected as the leader of Caerphilly County Borough Council. And by about August, I had written an article in the South Wales Argus, which had a full page, I shall never forget it, where I promised that my administration and Caerphilly Council would be a listening council. It depends how you look at it, really. I sometimes see protesters, and it heartens me to see this, with banners saying, "Are you still the listening council?" Now, some would say that resonates around this building, or others may say it haunts this building. You pays a penny, you takes your choice. I like to think it resonates around this building. And the purpose of rising is, during this consultation period, can I please ask directly to the leader of council, and if you have never been the leader of a council, by the way, and I have attained what you would think would be higher office as a member of the Senedd, but trust me, being the leader of the council is a tougher job. It's a tougher job. Whoever takes that post, it's a tougher job, and it's not one that many would envy. But can I ask the leader of council, would he please really take cognizance? None of this budget is going to be popular anywhere you go. We know that. But could I ask the leader of council if he would, in fact, please give an assurance that I'm sure he checks my Facebook page vigorously every day, but he will notice that the video I did on saving Coffee Vista stroke the gallery stroke the public conveniences in Caerphilly town, which is a main community hub, has now attained 19,000 views, well over 500 shares, and literally over 1,000 very positive comments indeed. I think I counted 3 comments which were not positive. So that is pretty indicative of the strength and feeling of public opinion on that one issue. And I'm sorry to pick on one issue, because with respect, there's probably a lot all of us could pick on. We all have our issues in this budget. But I think this one in particular, the Coffee Vista stroke the gallery and stroke the public convenience, is extremely important, clearly, by the overwhelming public opinion. And can I ask Sean Morgan, most respectfully, of course, would you please guarantee that you will listen to the people?
Well, the leader's not a member of this committee, but if he wishes to answer, he can. Yeah, well.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Whittle, for the question. Yes, we listen to the public. Yes, which is why we go out to consultation. But please remember that a consultation is not a referendum on something. We obviously take on their views. Now, you are obviously of the view that a coffee shop should be run in Caerphilly Town Centre at the cost to the taxpayer of £100,000 a year as a subsidy. Personally, I think that business could be offered out to the private sector, and they could run a coffee shop in that venue, probably rather more successfully than we do as a council. I think we need to know what councils are good at and what councils are not good at. Just one
I
moment.
did refer to
Are you asking a question,
the coffee shop,
Councillor
the
Whittle?
gallery, and the public convenience.
You asked a question, Councillor Whittle. Please have the decency to listen to the reply. And
Lindsay,
And
Lindsay,
there we
Lindsay.
go again. I mean,
Let him have a say, then you can come back. You've only asked once. You can come back.
It's amazing the passion surrounding this coffee shop. I don't know what your Clyde supporters in Risca, Rumney, or Blackwood would think of you demanding a subsidy of £100,000 for a coffee shop in the Toyne in Caerphilly Town Centre. But as it comes to, as for listening to residents, absolutely, we will listen to residents, and we will listen to residents within the confines of the extremely tight budgets that we do have. As you know, Councillor Whittle, we're looking for a £66 million shortfall in funding over the next 3 years. So what we will tell residents, and I think as a politician, sometimes some politicians struggle with this, but what you should do as a politician is tell residents the truth about the situation and not tell them what they want to hear. Thank you, Chair.
Would you like to come back, Councillor Whittle?
I thank Councillor Morgan for his opinions, but I did mention it wasn't just a coffee shop, it was the gallery, which where you can purchase gifts that are created by local artists. We're not going into major shops where the profits go across the Severn Bridge or across the Atlantic Ocean. We're talking about a gallery which helps local artists, and we're talking about a public convenience which for those of us in the older generation is very much needed. So I'm not just fighting for a coffee shop, I'm fighting for a coffee shop, tourist information centre, gallery and public convenience. Just a point I want to make.
So just to clarify, the leader did say he would listen to the consultation. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Councillor Eade, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Whittle somewhat stole my thunder on the coffee shop, so I'm just going to ask a supplementary question. My question was really, the leader has said as part of the budget consultation, residents will have to right to respond specifically. Well, this is a very tiny part of a massive, complicated budget. What I have emailed the leader and all of you, actually all members for, is a full public consultation on this issue alone. As Councillor Whittle has eloquently explained, certainly in my time as councillor, I have never seen such a massive upswell of a public opinion over the closure of a council facility. The petition that is online has now attracted over 2,500 signatures. Over 300 people turned up to protest the last Saturday gone, of all walks of life. So that just shows you the strength of public opinion. I would strongly plead with the leader to keep an open mind, to ask for a full public consultation on this issue, because clearly it's not a political issue. Clearly it runs across the whole spectrum of residents in our county borough. And if he has any interest in keeping on the side of our public, I think we really do need to consider the closure. And as Lindsay says, we're not talking about a coffee shop here. We're talking about public facilities, the only ones in the town centre now, and a much loved art gallery as well. So it's not as simple as just a coffee shop, okay? So please could the leader respond to that, or indeed the chair?
Well, I think the leader's already responded to Lindsay, so it'll just be the same answer. Because you've asked
slightly
the same
different question. Slightly different question. Could there be a consultation?
What was
a separate consultation on the closure of the facilities? Because it's such a major point of public interest.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for calling me back in, and thank you, Councillor Reid, for the question. I have replied to you today via email about the consultation process, and I would just say that if we were to consult every time we were making £100,000 saving on this council, we would grind to a halt as a council. I'm really rather surprised at the focus on a coffee shop in Caerphilly Town Centre, when there is so much more written into this budget, and yet a coffee shop seems to be Plaid Cymru's only concern. Thank you.
Chair, could I come in on a point of explanation?
Yes, please.
I don't see the word closure in this report. I see that it's been put out for tender, or for want of a better word. So it's actually a transfer rather than a closure. Am I correct on that?
If anyone want to get on the wording of that there?
No, he's not.
Can you stop interrupting, please? Mr. Williams, do you want to?
Thank you, Chair. The proposal is actually closure at this stage, with potentially looking for alternative providers in the future.
Okay, so that's clarified, yeah? Okay. Right, thank you. Councillor Charlson Dawson, please.
I just wanted to ask, it says in one of the tables about using grants to pay some of the Caerphilly Cares team. Just wondered what grant that was.
Okay. Mr. Harris or Mr. Street on it? Yeah, Caerphilly Cares.
Yeah, there's a number of grants that will be used. Some of the money that we get through the regional partnership, we'll also be using some of the reserves that are held within social care to fund this, and some of the cost of living reserves that were set back a number of years ago. So it's a mixture of things that we'll be calling upon, in addition, obviously, to the core budget that exists for that service area.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Judith Pritchard, please.
Yes, first, just a word about Cafe Vista. It's not just a coffee shop. It's a social services hub, really. It's a chatty cafe. And about, I don't know, 5 years ago, before the COVID, 50+ Forum were very keen on promoting these chatty cafes where people who suffer from loneliness and isolation could go along and be sure of having a warm welcome and a table where other people who were lonely and isolated could sit, and then they'd strike up a conversation, they could have a chat. There was one in Sainsbury's, for instance. Unfortunately, they've discontinued that. And I think there was one in Marks and Spencer's in Dowlers. It was a good idea at the time, and certainly this council promoted it, and Dave Street, the director, gave it his blessing. So it's a social centre as well as a cafe. So that, I think that's why there's so much support for it, because lots of people have been there. Welsh speakers, for instance, have groups sometimes, and it's a welcome place. It's a very welcome place that you can go. But what I'm really concerned about in this budget is the social services budget, where the vacancy factor, assuming that people can't be recruited for various posts, is going to be increased from 4.5% to 9%. That means, I think, that there'll be a disincentive to social services to do their absolute utmost to recruit people for the management, fieldwork and administration teams in both children and adult services. And this is really, I don't know, rather a strange thing to do in view of the pressures there are, and in view of the fact that we're well over budget in children's services, because we've got children who have to be put in very expensive placements, and some of those placements probably could be avoided if we had more workers earlier on in the process, if their families were supported to a greater extent until a crisis happens. So it doesn't seem to me to be very sensible or cost effective to do that. Equally, we're reducing the contribution to Gwent Frailty, which is really to keep people out of hospital and to encourage hospital discharge, and is a key process really in supporting people who are elderly people who are in need, and we're doing that at a time when the elderly population, elderly frail population, is increasing. We know it's going to increase because we know about the numbers and, you know, the births there were 85, 90 years ago. So we know how many 85 to 92 or 100 year old people we've got. So that doesn't seem to me to be a very sensible course of action. The other thing I would like to raise is the reduction of 4 hours in the subsidy for caretaker costs. I know this came up last year, but community centres have community centres. I think I may have said community councils. I don't think they've been consulted really. I don't think anybody has done an in-depth look at the needs of various community centres, who there again have a very important role in keeping the community together. So I would like that looked at and deferred until community centres can meet in a forum, which I think is on the cards, but it hasn't happened yet. I think we should defer it until we know what we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, councillor. First of all, Mr. Street, please, and then Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, Councillor Pritchard, I'll pick up the social services issues. I'll pass the community centre issues to one of my colleagues. Just to reassure you, the increase in the vacancy factor will have no impact at all on the level of provision we can make. It's simply a reflection of the reality of our recruitment challenges. And you'll know from the social services scrutiny meeting, they're not unique to Caerphilly, they're across Wales. What we've had historically is, because we've struggled to recruit, large underspends. What we are suggesting here is that we won't have those large underspends in the same way. We'll simply utilise them earlier in the year. But to reassure you, if we are continuing to all endeavours to recruit people, and if that means that we recruit people at a rate which is greater than the vacancy factor, then we'll be happy to do so. Your reference to Gwent Frailty is, I'm afraid, just a reflection on the way Gwent Frailty has gone across Gwent. We are increasingly less reliant on that than the funding for Gwent Frailty, because we're doing that work in-house. There will be no impact of this as far as hospital discharge is concerned. As when the carers are out there, we will recruit them. And we'll deal with any consequences there are for the vacancy factor over and beyond that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Mr. Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the phased reduction in caretaker hours for community centres was actually a decision of last year's budget. So this is year 2 of a 3-year phase-in. So this is not a new proposal. It's something that was agreed by council last year. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Burton, Pretty, please.
I have a question about Coffee Vista too, but it is a different question. Coffee Vista is not just a coffee shop for most of its customers. Many are elderly and live alone. And Coffee Vista is a way of dealing with loneliness and isolation. People feel comfortable there, like people like my aunt, who's 94 and lives on her own, and very often the staff there are the only people she speaks to all day. The staff are more like social workers and friends for the customers. They chat to customers. They know when they've been missing in hospital or if they've been ill. Often it's the only conversation customers have all day. And the coffee shop improves well-being by providing companionship, as other people have mentioned, where people can share tables and different groups can meet. So just could it be possible to delay the closure for about 6 months to allow time for the management and council officers and others to try to build up more business? For example, in the evenings, could a different business use the premises to bring in rent and more income? I'm just asking for a delay, really, so that, you know, people can try to make it more commercial.
Okay. Mr. Williams, would you want to come back on that? Is that your thing? Yeah.
Yeah, Coffee Vista is one of the proposals from my directorate chair. I guess that, you know, whether to delay this is a matter for members when the budget is agreed at council.
Okay, council leader.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, the consultation will not be put on hold. We need to find out the public's view on this. Thank you, Chair.
You want to come back on that, Anne? Or no? Okay. Okay, thank you. Councillor Enright, next, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'm struggling with lots of this, to be fair. I could probably spend all day picking at it. You're not going to allow me to do that, and everyone's got a home to go to. So I'm just going to try and keep this as short and sweet as I can. I've listened to what Steve has said tonight, and I've listened to a number of figures that's been suggested, 46 point something million, and I've read somewhere 66 million over 3 years. So this is what I'm struggling with. We've got all that to save. So how can this authority between March and September last year invest an additional 21 million in gilts, bonds, and increase their portfolio, their investment portfolio, from 164 million to 185 million? So that's what I'm struggling with. So that's my question one. My question two is, where did that 21 million come from? So that's my question two. My question three is not a question.
Gary, two questions. If you want to come in.
Hang on, Chair. It's not a question.
No,
it's an observation.
You can come back in after
I'll come back
everyone's.
in then.
Okay.
Okay. I'll come
Mr.
back in
Harris.
for my observation.
Yeah,
Thanks, Chair.
that's okay. Mr. Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, we've seen an increase between March 23 to September in the investments, and that increase was £21.9 million. So where did it come from? 15.6 million has been invested in bonds and fixed term deposits. But what I would stress, these are not long-term investments. None of them will go beyond the 2024 financial year. So we could call on those investments during this calendar year if we need to. They're not tied up for any longer than that. Gilts have been mentioned. We haven't taken out any new investments in gilts since the end of March 2023. Indeed, we only have 10 million invested in gilts, and they were taken out back in 2016. The Debt Management Office, in other words, the HM Treasury, we've seen an increase of 9.5 million in the funding in the DMO. That can be called upon as soon as we need it. So if we needed that money tomorrow, I could call it back tomorrow. That's not an issue. And what it represents, obviously, we're a very large organisation. We spend over £850 million per annum. So at different points during the year, we will have different levels of cash available. And at other points in the year, we will have to call on more cash compared to other periods during the year. We've also seen a reduction in that 6-month period, quoted by Councillor Enright, in our investments with local authorities and housing associations of £3 million. And that accounts for the 21.9 million referred to. So what I'm trying to explain is a lot of that will be cash flow. Obviously, as I said, there's periods during the year where we will have more cash available. There's periods during the year when we won't. And also the investments are largely linked, obviously, to our reserves, which we discussed earlier. And as those reserves reduce, we will see, obviously, less investments and a lower return on our investments. And just for members' information, as Mina's figures are being quoted at different points in time. As of today, the investments are 160 million, so 25 million less than they were in March 23. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Next up is Councillor Martin James, please.
Thank you, Chair. Two very quick questions, really. We said we're going out to consultation. Can you tell me this been advertised? I'm sure I've read it right. There's only 3 libraries where the consultations are going to take place. One in Rumney, one in Risca, and one in Caerphilly. Nothing in the middle of the valley anywhere. Can I be told why we are not sort of consulting more widely with people? We have the opportunities, we have libraries. That's the first thing. Do you want the second question now?
Yep, ask the second one and then
right.
Get the
Sporting Centre of Excellence in right, thank you, Chair. The Sporting Centre of Excellence in Ystrad Mynach naturally is leased out to the Gwent Dragons. Does that mean that these increases, the Gwent Dragons will have those same increases as what our local football clubs, netball clubs, etc. are going to receive now if this budget goes through. Thank you,
No.
Chair.
Thank you, Martin. Good question. Hayley, do you want to answer the first question for me, please?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor James, there are 8 drop-in sessions at libraries across the county borough, including there's one in Ashton as well. You should have received an email that I sent to all members this morning, which is also being shared through our communications colleagues to members of the public, posters and etc. And we've got some online sessions in the diary as well for anybody that might not be able to make those sessions.
Right.
So I
I
can
can
confirm there are
apologise
8.
then, Chair. My computer's been down all day offline, so I haven't opened my emails up today. I apologise for that then. Thank you.
Oh, that's okay. Okay, thank you, Hayley, for that. Mark, you want to come in on the?
Thank you, Chair. Just a point of clarification, the Centre of Excellence is not leased out to Newport Gwent Dragons. Daytime use, when there would be no other use there, we have agreements in place with the Dragons, Coleg y Cymoedd and the Welsh Rugby Union to use both pitches during the day. The agreement we have with the Dragons is in the process of being renegotiated, and their increase is actually considerably more than what we're talking about tonight. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, next
Thank you,
we
Mark.
have Councillor Shane Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I noticed in the report of the temporary savings of the winding house or the potential mothballing of the winding house. I welcome the exploration of a community asset transfer, but I just wondered if that wasn't successful, is the future is likely to be rather than temporary savings, more permanent savings. So my question is centred around the temporary savings of £93,000. That is likely to be permanent if it was closed. Is that right, Mark?
Yeah,
no reason to believe, Chair, that the asset transfer will be unsuccessful. We've got quite a healthy community-run facility in New Tredegar at the White Rose Centre, and it's that group that we've been talking about the asset transfer. So I have no reason to think that they will be unsuccessful. So yes, I suppose it could be a permanent saving if it's successful.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next is Councillor Bishop, please. Alec.
Thank you, Chair. Just quickly, really, when I've looked at the figures, it seems to me we're hitting the working class a lot harder than anybody else. Is there anything in place to support them? Because obviously they don't get the additional fundings, the food banks and everything that people on benefits are receiving. And yet they're the ones who'll have to pay for the additional school meal charges, council rent and the additional council tax. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Harris.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Obviously, we do have support available through the council tax reduction scheme in respect of council tax. And I think it references in the report there's around 16,000 households that currently receive support through the council tax reduction scheme. And just under 14,000 of those do actually receive 100% reduction in their tax bills. Clearly, a number of services across the council also work to support vulnerable families. For example, the Capilli Care Service has already been mentioned. And the other thing I'd like to mention is we did establish a cost of living fund of £3 million, and obviously we're still accessing that to provide support as well. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come back on that? No.
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Councillor Colin Mann, then, please. Are you there, Colin, or you gone? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Fiona Childs, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, as you're aware, I'm very passionate about education, and how that impacts on the youths and the school community as a whole. You know, in relation to having a good education and setting the budget. So I'm very concerned under 5.2.8, where it states that on a like-for-like basis, specific revenue grants will decrease on an all-wage basis by some 6.3%, or around £92 million. So how will this affect schools and the education of our children? And also I noticed as well, there's only 4 headings now for grants going forward. And I wondered where, like the grants like PDG, etc., will come under these headings, please.
Okay, Mr. Edmund or Mr. Harris? Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I'll start, and I think Ed will come in as well. Yes, you're right. We are facing a significant decrease in the specific grants. And as you rightly state, some of those are being amalgamated into 4 new grants in respect of education. Whilst we know there's reductions, what we don't have yet is specific details, because this is at an all Wales level, but it's clearly the impacts will be felt not just in schools and the education service centrally, but across all service areas. Obviously, we'll work with schools to support them through this where we can, but the working assumption in terms of the budget is that these reductions will need to be absorbed by service areas. If we were to seek to provide further corporate funding to offset these reductions, then clearly that would add to the significant savings requirement we're already facing of £46.7 million. Ed, did you want to come in specifically, or?
Chair, I don't think I can add much to that, to be honest with you. I think Steve's covered that off in its entirety. I know we have got Jane Southcombe on the call. I just want to, if it's okay with you, Chair, ask if Jane's got anything more that she can add on this.
Yeah, we can.
Jane?
We can get the answers. That's what Andrew wants.
Yeah, certainly. Good evening, everyone. So just to sort of give you a little bit of information, because actually we're sort of trying to establish the details of this for 24-25 for our schools. So like you've just mentioned, Councillor Farina Childs, the education grants now are going to go into 4 funding streams, as you've just outlined. Overall, there does look like there's a small reduction, but we're waiting to get the details on that, because it might not be a reduction, because sometimes the grants that go in are temporary and they don't continue year on year. What we do understand is the school standards line, which would have been your EIG grant, your recruit, recover and raise standards, and the foundation phase. That heading does look like it has got an increase on it, but until we get all the details through and we get the terms and conditions for different funding elements, it's very difficult to sort of say what the figures look like compared to last year, and whether there's any sort of change in the priorities in terms of how schools and education use that funding. So we had a conversation yesterday with Welsh Government. I think they're working to provide us with some more local information over the coming weeks, and also to provide us with those terms and conditions so we can have a little bit of a closer look at it. So we are on it, we are having those discussions, but we just haven't got that finer detail at the moment to give you a proper position in terms of comparing 23-24 and what it may look like in 24-25. So on that one, a further update will need to follow.
Okay, thank you, Jane.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Do you want to come back on that, Andrew, or are you happy with that response?
I'm happy, just like I said, perhaps when we got the 4 headings, it'd be nice to circle it perhaps outside the meeting, what will actually be covered in the 4 headings. You know, like I said, like PTG, CIG and all that, you know, and gives everybody a breakdown of what these 4 new headings will actually cover.
Yeah.
If possible.
Okay, Jane, do you want to come back in with that?
Yeah, just to let you know, we could probably give you an indicative of that now, just so you've got a feel for what sits under the 4 standards. But obviously, you know, as we get more information, we can give you a little bit more detail. So I can circulate that after this.
That'd be great. Thank you, Jane. Thank you,
Okay,
Chair.
thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Jane. Councillor Mann, I think you're back now, aren't you?
Yeah, apologies, Chair. My link went
That's
as
okay.
just as you were calling me. But okay, if I could mention some areas of concern, Chair. I note that we're freezing to community safety warden posts. These people are very much valued by the public, as I think we all know. And with the lack of police uniform on the streets, quite often they're even more valuable. So again, I think that freeze should be as short as possible. I also note there's a reduction in the music service by 10%. The music service, I've been told, is a skeleton of what it used to be, and I'm just wondering how much of it is going to be left if this actually goes on. As far as the cuts to the community centres and sports pitches are concerned, what the authority is doing is hitting volunteers. The volunteers that run all the community centres, and obviously the more difficult it is made with caretakers or whatever, the more difficult it is to struggle. And a lot of centres struggle to get members on the committee for the reason that it's quite a hard and committed job. With the sports pitches, this has been mentioned before. You know, if we've got a serious healthy living agenda, again, should we be hitting often youngsters? We're trying to encourage youngsters to live a healthy life, yet we're again making it far more difficult to run these teams. I mean, it can cost up to £1,000 to run just a junior team for a season when you take all the kit and all the pitch fees and everything else into account. And I think the authority should be encouraging this activity rather than putting barriers in the way. I won't say too much about the Coffee Vista thing, Chair, but I'm wondering.
Can
Chair.
you ask the question? Is there a question anywhere there, Colin? Because it doesn't seem to be.
Well, I'm asking really the cabinet to actually look again at these things. With the Coffee Vista, there's a question here, Chair. It's also a tourist information centre. I'm wondering how many authorities. Well, number one, where will that tourist information be found if this is closed? And how many councils actually make a profit out of a tourist information centre? I'm not aware of any.
Okay. Leader, do you want to give Colin a reply there, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Colin. Coffee Vista isn't a visitor centre and hasn't been a visitor centre for some time, Colin. As you'll know, the majority of tourist information these days is directly available on people's phones, and that's where most people go, which is why we see fewer and fewer leaflets from different destinations. But I can assure you that if we do have leaflets from around the borough or from other organisations that wish to have them displayed, those would be displayed in the library. You said quite a number of comments on different things there. I mean, community safety wardens you mentioned, it is obviously they're a non-statutory service, and you were saying that while there are fewer police on the streets, we need the community safety wardens more than ever. Well, that's a fair enough comment, but are you saying that it's a council's job to replace falling police numbers? You mentioned a reduction in the music service. We certainly have a gold standard music service, not a skeleton one, and a reduction of 10% is not a huge amount. You also mentioned community centres and healthy living agenda with regards to sports pitches. So, you know, I'm glad you've taken on the breadth of the consultation exercise that we are going out on this budget. And as you have so many concerns in so many areas, and I'll reflect back to Councillor Eads, Councillor Enright's point that there were so many areas that he could pick holes in, I think was his statement. Well, as you are looking right across the budget area as you are, I congratulate you for that, and I would welcome your alternative budget being tabled, hopefully prior to the council meeting on the 27th of February, because obviously we would like to have time to read your alternative budget so you can tell us how we can keep all of these things within the budgets that we currently work within. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, can I come back for a moment?
No.
Chair,
Colin,
I'm just correct. I want to correct a statement made by Councillor Morgan. Chair.
Mute. Can you mute him, please? Thank you very much. You can put your hand up and come back in, Colin. You had a very long question. So you did. We have about 6 things in it. Councillor Owens, please. Owen. No.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Couple of points from me or questions, whatever. Two. I'm quite surprised with all of the conversations we've been having tonight. There hasn't actually been any mention of the poll tax or the council tax. I still call it the poll tax. Sorry, going back from the days of Margaret Thatcher. But 6.9%. And as the report tells us, going into November, the CPI was 3.9. I know it's gone up a bit since then, I believe, just over 4 or whatever. But we're sort of well in excess, 60, 70% above inflation. And of course, we've got a lot of savings to make, again, which I understand as well. But one thing that I'd like to sort of ask in terms of the council tax and the money that we are, finding to balance the budget, is that we're transferring 100% of the underspend position from last year, which is £3.656 million. So we're going to raise from the council tax increase 5.935 million. But we sort of set a council tax. I can't remember last year exactly what it was, but it was clearly up again over inflation, or it may have been below last year. Sorry, no, that the fact that we had a higher inflation, but we set it quite high. And then we don't spend the money at the end of the year because we're going back in with 3.656 million going back in. So clearly we're taking money off the residents, and then we're not spending we're not spending the full budget. So come the end of the year now, we're putting that back in, but we're expecting almost twice the inflation on the council tax. Now, are we going to be in the same position next year? This is my question really to probably Steve. Are we going to be in the same position next year where we come to the end of the year, we've raised near enough £6 million with this 6.9%, and then we come in with an underspend of say 3-4 million next year, and then we expect council tax to be set above inflation again. So we're asking for money from the residents, and then we're not spending it all, and then they get penalised at the start of the year again. And I don't see really that is fair on the residents, particularly in the current economic climate with the cost of living crisis, etc. So that's my first question, which perhaps Steve would have a view on. And the other point that I'm noting is all to do with the mobilising Team Caerphilly. We're talking about the, what we're going to do here is eventually we're going to put money into the budget through the projects that come through the Team Caerphilly, place shaping, etc., etc. So 5.110 tells us that there's significant work being undertaken in the past 12 months. And then further on in the report at 5.710, as already mentioned, we've got over 150 ideas and projects, and indeed some of these are now taking flight. So we're not going to get anything out of them this year because of the time that they take to come through. And again, I understand that. But with 150 projects, ideas and projects, we don't know what they are, and we don't know what they are going to make us in 12 months' time, 18 months' time, whenever they come to fruition. Could we, as a council, have a report on exactly where we are with various projects and what we're likely to get out of them in the future, so that we can say, yes, we will have 5 million, which we would have made going into like the 24-25 budget, for example. So I would like some kind of indication in terms of a report would be good on where we are with all these projects. There's lots of money going into it. There's lots of officers' time going into it. I'd like to know what's going to come out at the end of it, or at least have some idea of that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Owens. I'll get you answers to, okay, the first one will go to Mr. Harris first, and then the leader.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Let's look at how things have transpired in terms of our budget over the last 3 or 4 years, okay? 2021 and 21-22, on our budget, we were looking at underspends of around 38 million, all of which has been reinvested into our reserves and is obviously backing a number of projects moving forward. For 22-23, there was a drastic reduction in that underspend, and we were down to around 8.6 million. For the current year, as Councillor Owen says, we are forecasting 3.6. So I think that demonstrates just how much tighter things are becoming moving forward. And I think, obviously, 24-25, even with setting the transitional budget that we've proposed to you, we will be looking at difficulties in terms of balancing that budget. It's going to be a hard ask because already we're looking, even for this year, at only a 3.7 million underspend. That underspend will go into the general fund and will be one of the reserves that we're proposing that we use to balance the budget for next year. So that's not lost to our residents. That 3.7 will be part of the 11.3 million one-off use of reserves that we're proposing for next year. So it's an important element of balancing our budget. In terms of mobilising Team Caerphilly, I'll just say something quickly, but I'm sure colleagues will have things to add. The £5 million is an in-year target for 24-25, and we'll be seeking to achieve that through some of the early in-flight projects which are mentioned in the body of the report. But clearly, facing a £46.7 million savings requirement for the following 2 years, we will be looking for that programme to come up with significant further savings, and we will bring those for your consideration, scrutiny and decision as and when those projects are ready. We will not be waiting until we're having this conversation this time next year. As these proposals firmed up, we will bring them to you for consideration. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Leader, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it always seems strange that the word underspends is on the accounts when we're actually going to be spending in excess of £11 million of reserves. So while it's an accounting terminology, I would say the reality is that not only do we not really have an underspends as I look at accounts, but we've got massive deficits. And I know Councillor Owen there mentioned the increase in council tax, and every time we increase council tax, it's a very difficult. It's always very difficult because residents are always at the forefront of our minds. Not only residents and their ability to pay council tax, but obviously the needs of residents, which must be balanced against council tax increases. But I will say that indicatively, even with a 6.9% increase in council tax, Caerphilly Council will still be the lowest council tax in the whole of Wales. As for the 150 projects you mentioned there, coming from the work with Parago, it is a bit of a mind-boggling amount of projects. We couldn't, as a council, undertake all of those projects. Therefore, there's a prioritisation process currently happening. And obviously, as a politician, I would be wanting to prioritise the projects which bring the biggest savings. As Steve just mentioned, we've got an indicative saving of £5 million for this coming year, and I'm certainly looking to ramp that up something significantly over the following 2 years. It's something that we must do if we are going to balance our budgets in 2 or 3 years' time. But on that, again, I would invite Councillor Owen and indeed all councillors to the Wednesday morning Parago event that takes place between 9:30 and 10:30 every Wednesday morning. It would be really good to see you here at T Penalta. If not, you can attend online and find out all about the work and all about the prioritisation of these projects. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. The other part of it, Ed, was that you? Or?
No, I was just going to cover off what the leader covered in terms of the stand-ups. We've also held member seminars. There was one in the autumn which members that attended would understand all of the 150 projects and how we're going about this. We'll have another member seminar now over the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks to refresh members' understanding of where we are currently. So lots of opportunities to engage and engage on a weekly basis, if not more frequently. Thanks, Chair.
So that'll bring forward some of the reports then on what we're doing. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. There's no other new members then, so we'll go Councillor Lead. Another question.
Yes,
You're
thanks, Chair. I think I'm off mute now. Apologies to ask another question. But before I do that, I just wanted to respond to something Councillor Morgan, leader, said with regard to the budget. Obviously, like Councillor Enright and Councillor Mann, I've got loads and loads of points and questions that I'll raise in an email after this, because I appreciate there's limited time and I don't want to waste the rest of the members' time in asking lots of questions. But he did say he would expect a budget from Plaid Cymru. Well, that assumes that political parties set budget, write budget papers, but obviously that's not the case. This budget paper has been produced by officers. They're listed at the back. The authors are our Deputy Chief Executive and our Head of Financial Services, along with about 8 other officer consultees. So unfortunately, as an opposition party, we don't have access to officers' time. I wouldn't expect them to spend 2 months producing an alter. Well, yeah, but the time and the time and investment taken to produce a budget, I don't think they would invest that time in producing an alternative budget. If they would do, that's fantastic. Happy to employ the officers, Steve Harrison, Deputy Executive, for the next 2 months to produce an alternative budget. I'm just saying I don't think that's the case. But what I can reassure you is we will be asking lots of questions and scrutinising, as is our job role. Yeah. But I do have a specific question.
Got a question.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yes. Thanks for your patience. The question is with regard to the schools. I'm really worried. The section that talks about the £3 million in savings by schools, that's a really significant amount of money. Has an impact assessment been conducted on this? To what degree have the schools been engaged with this figure? What help is the council going to provide to schools to meet this stringent target? This is a direct impact on our children and our children's education. Also, couple the charges for school meals. This is going to hit low-income families very, very hard. So I'd appreciate a comment on the sort of, budget consultation, and then secondly on my question about the £3 million savings by schools. Thank you very much, Chair.
Well, Steve, can you just answer your availability? That was, they're saying that you can't go to the officers. Can you answer Councillor's question on that? And then I'll go to Ed for the education one, please.
Okay, first of all, can I just put on record that officers do not set the budget for the council. It is a matter for full council. Officers will provide their professional advice, and obviously that will be endorsed by Cabinet through an ongoing process. But the final budget is the responsibility of council.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that, Steve. Sorry.
I can of course make my time available to members, whether they're within the Labour group, the Plaid group, or independents. In fact, I have written to the leader of Plaid and the leader of the Independent and offered my time in terms of working through the budget proposals. And if any alternative proposals are offered up, I'm more than happy to spend some time scrutinising those. Thank you, Chair.
The point I'm making is that the budget paper before us today has been produced by yourself and other officers, Steve. I agree with you that it is full council that decide that budget, but we haven't produced
with all due respect,
paper.
Greg, with all due respect, I think you need to be speaking to your leader. If you've got a budget proposal to, if you've got a budget to bring forward.
Fair enough.
Well, not missing the point. Not missing the point. Right, Ed, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Naturally, we are as a council facing a significant deficit and have to put a range of proposals forwards, which I think is fair to say no one in this room would necessarily be willing to do if there were alternatives on the table. The other thing that you'll see in terms of this budget is that every part of this organisation is taking a share of the pain. We engage with the head teachers, both the primary heads and the secondary heads, through the autumn. We explained what we were doing. We explained the challenges that we were facing. We walked them through the mobilising team Caerphilly work that we've been doing. And I think it was fair to say when we introduced the target of 3 million across that head teacher grouping, the head teachers were much more positive than I anticipated they would be. They were expecting a much higher number. But there's also a group of head teachers who are very, very innovative and are keen to get around the table with us and work through how we might be able to tackle some of these financial challenges by doing things differently. Some of that will be working with the organisation differently, where we are able to provide support to the schools in a more efficient and effective way than perhaps we've been able to previously. That's part of the work we're doing as within the mobilising team Caerphilly work itself. And also those head teachers, of course, do have the ability to determine what they spend their money on. So I think in response to Councillor Reid, there's strong levels of engagement, there's good relationships with our head teachers, there's a strong foundation upon which to approach this challenge, and there's a willingness on all parties to try and minimise the impact of these cuts on the front line. And I look forward to working with head teacher colleagues in bringing those proposals forward. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Enright, as promised, you can come for your observations.
Chair, very quick one. I didn't have a question, but I do know, Gav. Very quick one. It's on the back end of what Steve said very, very quickly about he can recall the money for, at a whim, really. And I'm just wondering if there are any financial penalties for recalling any investments. That's my question, and that's the question I'll give you. My observation, and this is what I want to tag on to the end, in light of we've invested 21 million, however, it's scattered across the board, gilts, bonds, portfolios and all that kind of stuff, and we've increased our general fund balance, or it's still the same at 3%, which is about 15 million. So roughly, that's about 36 million. Surely we could do with some of that money now, this year, as opposed to 24, 25, 24, 25, 25, 26. So my request and observation would be when Cabinet sit down and talk about what they're going to, cut out, and it's like turkeys voting for Christmas, can they also include a review of what investments we have to try and claw back as much money as we can to support this year's financial budget? And that was my observation. I wanted to tag on to the end. Hopefully that makes sense.
I will get Steve to answer the first one, and then Sean.
Yeah, Councillor Enright, to pick up your first point, if we withdraw some of the investments early, there would be penalties. So that's not something I'd recommend in the current financial climate. Indeed, I wouldn't recommend that anyway. In terms of all the investments, what would they be,
Steve? Sorry, what would they be? Financial penalties?
Well, it depends on it depends on the investment, Councillor Enright. It depends on how long the investment's been placed for. So there's a number of variables, but if you'd like a conversation with me outside the meeting, I'm more than happy to pick that up with you. Can I just put on record as well, all of our investments are in line with the Council's investment strategy, which is approved annually as part of the wider Treasury Management Strategy. There's significant detail in that report, and it is fully supported by members, and you will see that report come in alongside the budget in February, so there'll be an opportunity, obviously, for further questions at that point. I think I'll leave it there for today, but I'm more than happy to sit down with Councillor Enright and go through this in more detail if you would find that helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Leader?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies for coming in so often, but Councillor Enright did make a comment there about bringing forward reserves to run the council now, rather than keeping them there in reserves, which is that's fine, but I will come back to talking about the opposition tabling an alternative budget, because perhaps within their alternative budget they could tell us exactly what they want to take off our forward work programme when it comes to spending down those reserves, because our reserves, I always describe them as ambition. When we spend £3 million on a school, we get a £9 million school. When we spend £13 million on a leisure centre, we get a £33 million leisure centre because of the money leveraged in. In fact, I've stood up here before in the past and said about the £3.6 million of investments that the Regeneration Project Board have undertaken, and that has leveraged in £96 million worth of investment into the county borough. Now, you know, Councillor Enright is fine. You can bring that money forward, and then you won't spend it in the future on future projects. But please, I would urge you to table that alternative. Sure. I would ask you to table that alternative budget, and then you can tell us exactly what you're taking off
Yeah,
the agenda.
You're missing the point. That's not what I tried to say. Perhaps I confused. What I was basically saying was the investments that the authority have got in, which are 160 odd million, when you sit down as a cabinet, can you have a look at those investments to see if there's any of those investments that you can bring back to support this year's budget? And with your general fund balance of 3%, which equates to about 15 million, can you as a cabinet, when you sit down, look to see if you can reduce that 3% to support this year's budget? I'm not asking you to spend any more in your reserves. That's not what I'm asking. So you're missing the point on that one. Or perhaps I've not explained it in the way that I want. But hopefully that revised statement will clarify it.
Okay, Gary, I'll get Steve to answer that bit there that you brought forward and the reason.
Yeah, just very quickly, I did say earlier on the reserves report, the vast majority of the investments are linked directly to the reserves. So if we use investment money to help balance the budget, and we are doing a proportion of that, as you know from the proposals, that will impact on reserves and will reduce the level of reserves. But what I will say is that we cannot keep using these temporary measures to balance the budget. So again, my office there to Councillor Enright, if he wants to talk some of these issues through, I'm more than happy to do that with him outside the meeting.
Okay, take that up. Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify what the leader said earlier, and Sean, I don't know if you've been in the Cafe Vista / Tourist Centre lately, but there is a rack of information in the in that location. Ironically, it includes information from all sorts of different places in Wales, but nothing from Caerphilly County Borough. And in fact, I was promised probably 6 to 8 months ago that a Caerphilly brochure was actually in the process of being produced, and it would be produced in the near future. So it appears that we're not taking the place seriously as a tourist centre.
Okay, thank you, Colin. I'll get you the answer. Steve, Leader, have you been to see the leaflets over there? No.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure about the leaflets there. I would look into that, but I can assure you that we cannot afford to spend £100,000 a year to display some leaflets there. Not when we've got an alternative venue in the library, which wouldn't cost us £100,000 a year. I mean, I just find the whole argument around this quite absurd. It's a coffee shop.
Okay, thank you. The final word now tonight. The final word tonight, Councillor Owen. We've got a question.
Thank you, Chair. I'm honoured. Yeah, I just wanted to come back to say thank you for the responses. I note in the leader's point on the meetings, which I am planning to attend some of the meetings as and when I can. But I just wanted to, it is sort of one half of a question really, because I did ask it. I asked for a report on the projects, and yes, I'm not talking 150 ideas. Clearly, some of them are not going to come to fruition. But for the ones that are taking flight, why can't we have a little, you know, like a general report, like a précis of the projects that are coming on and where we are with them, just to keep us updated as members well before they're sort of ready to go then.
Well,
Just
he
to give
did-
us an idea.
He
And I
did,
can't
Bob.
see why we couldn't
No,
have that.
yeah. No,
Thank you.
They did say though, they did say that they were going to hold a seminar. A seminar is better than getting sent an email with a report because you're going to be saying a seminar. But I'll get Ed to answer that there, please, as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just to reiterate, Councillor Owen, we do talk about all of these projects every week in the open, in the Agile space on a Wednesday morning at 9:30, and you are, as the leader referenced earlier on, able to join that online. So you get a regular weekly update on where we are with all of those projects. We certainly think that's much more useful to members than bringing a report in once every 6 months. But we don't stop there. We are hosting a seminar again in the next 4 to 6 weeks. There's also an intranet site with a dedicated page on it for mobilising Team Caerphilly that has video updates and blogs from all of the officers involved in the programme. So I don't think we could be more comprehensive in terms of the information that we're providing to members. And certainly I would be resistant to also bring in a report in that just tells you all the stuff that you could be connecting to almost on a weekly basis. So again, it's a point for members. You may have a different view. You may tell me, Ed, I don't care about your resistance. I'd like a report. We certainly think working in the open is very, very different and provides a huge amount of information on a regular basis. And that's certainly my preference at the minute. Thanks, Chair.
No problem. Okay. I was going to say Bob will get the last, but Steve's going to get the last word, I think.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to take the opportunity really just to emphasise the scale of the challenge that we're facing as a council. Much of the discussion tonight has been on the 24-25 draft budget proposals, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that we do have a £46.7 million financial gap for the 2-year period 25-26 to 26-27. We're not alone in this. You will all see the press. There's local authorities in England serving 114 notices, which effectively means they cannot balance their budget. Or in a nutshell, they're facing bankruptcy. Some of those councils are dealing with commissioners who effectively have been put into those councils to turn the situation around. And in that situation, as members, that is actually taken out of your hands. We've been fortunate in the current financial year and for next year in that we've been able to put transitional budgets in place with a range of temporary savings. And obviously, because we've had reserves, we've been able to use those to help us balance the budget. However, moving forward, I will not be able to recommend to you that we carry on using temporary measures because that's not sustainable for the council's financial position. So as we've already said a number of times this evening, there will be a number of proposals coming to you as and when they're ready for scrutiny and decision. And, you know, it says in the report, some of those are probably not going to be popular decisions, but they're ones that will be inevitable in the current financial climate. So those reports will be prepared and it will be brought to you for scrutiny and decision, as I say, as we move through the coming months. But I just wanted to put on record, you know, the scale of the challenge we face. And, you know, this is a serious situation for us all collectively. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. Members, you know, I've been now since 2012 and year after year after year, it's cuts after cuts after cuts. And none of us put a name forwards to do this here. You know, we all want to see Caerphilly grow and get better. But, you know, when's it going to end, these cuts? You know, when all councils are gone. So, you know, it's every year we're having the same arguments. And every year we still got to make these tough decisions. It would just be good for a couple of years where we don't have to make any cuts. Would be absolutely great. But unfortunately, that's not where we are at the minute. So item 4, the draft budget, the recommendations are on page 21 of your packs. The Joint Scrutiny Committee is asked to consider and comment upon the content of the report prior to final budget proposals being presented to Cabinet and Council on the 27th of February 2024. I think we have done that this evening, and I know a few issues is going to come up on Council when we actually do the budget. But thank you all very much, members. It was better than what I thought. So thank you all and have a good evening. Good night.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Good night. Thank you.
Mr.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Well, we can fill it, it's cheaper.